welcome everyone. I was telling Danielle that I always get really nervous every Friday, about 9:45, 10 to 10. There's 3 people in here. I'm like, geez, we've got a guest who's driven who knows how long in this valley that just doesn't seem to open up this semester. I can't see anything, and we've got like 6 people here. I'm like, sure enough, 2 minutes after 10, 3 minutes after 10, the room fills up. So thank you. I did say that we should have just announced that Logan Canyon is closed. So it's not. That way we'd prevent all the people who want to go to Beaver to say, no, you need to be right here. You can't go up the canyon anyway, right? Maybe we'll do that next Friday and every Friday from now on, right? So welcome. We're so happy to have Danielle Nielson here. She's an Aggie, a 1999 graduate of the Huntsman School, and just has a phenomenal story that I think that all of us will benefit from hearing. One of the pillars of the Huntsman School is entrepreneurial spirit, and you have a family history of entrepreneurialism.
I do.
Can you talk a little bit about some examples from your grandfather and your father and your uncles?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. First, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to participate in today's forum. So, yeah, I did. I grew up surrounded by entrepreneurs. My grandfather was kind of the lead in that. He built a good business here in Salt Lake City. He grew up in Holden, Utah, a very small town. He had 7...
I don't know where Holden is.
It's by Fillmore. I know most people don't know where Holden is, so it's down by Fillmore. He had 7 brothers, grew up on a farm and didn't have much, but he came to Salt Lake and was very successful. And throughout the years, I was able to watch him be successful in what he did and the ventures he did. And then my uncle was also an entrepreneur and has been very successful. And my dad, to be honest, tried some. He was in some businesses that went well. He was in some that didn't do very well. And so I was able to kind of also see the flip side of that, which is not all businesses are successful, but getting out and trying, and then taking those experiences of where you maybe failed and then using that to be successful.
Yeah, well, that's great. So you grew up in Salt Lake. I just found out Danielle went to Brighton High School. Had I known that before?
Are you a Bengal? Nice.
Oh, now I have a different thought about Kenny also.
Oh, Kenny, you're just fine.
I'm a graduate of Hillcrest High School. Those of you who don't know about Salt Lake, that's like a Skyview Mount Crest deal going on in Salt Lake, exactly. And so it's unfortunate.
I know it is unfortunate.
So growing up in that area, what were your early years like? What was your first job?
So my first job, I started working when I was 16. Right away, I had to. My parents were, in order to go out and do activities and pay for gas, I had to go out and get a job. I worked at a sandwich shop called Blimpies. So that was my first job at 16. And then I worked at the dry cleaners for a short amount of time. And then in high school, towards my senior year, I started working for a company called AirTouch Paging. By a raise of hands, does anyone know what a pager is? Good. I'm not that old. So I actually worked in the malls, and I sold pagers when I was in high school for AirTouch Paging.
What mall?
Fashion Place Mall.
Fashion Place Mall.
And
it will have a huge impact on your later career,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
So why did you decide to come to Utah State from Brighton High School?
I think that I wanted the experience of kind of that college atmosphere. Mm-hmm. I knew if I stayed in Salt Lake and went to the University of Utah, it'd be a very commuter type school, and I wouldn't be able to get that college experience. So that was really my draw to Utah State. Yeah. And then had heard really good things about Utah State. So that's why I decided to come here in the School of Business. I knew from day one that I wanted to be in the School of Business, and so that's why I came here.
So when you were here, did you have an idea what you wanted to do for a career?
I knew that I wanted to venture into owning my own business. But when you're 18 and starting college, you don't know where that's going to take you. So my thought process was go through the School of Business, get a degree, and then kind of see where that would take me in my next steps in life.
Yeah. So you were also involved on campus. You were in the Chi Omega sorority.
I was.
Tell me about some of those leadership experiences during college, outside of classes.
I think that was my first, that was my real experience as being a leader. I had a passion for people, and I knew that I liked business, but I was able to be a part of an organization here on campus that I was able to be a part of in a leadership role. So I was a treasurer for a portion of, so it was like my sophomore to junior year, and then junior to senior year, I was the president of the sorority. You kind of walk into that and you're not sure how to handle being a president of a sorority where you've got 60 girls, they're your peers, they're your friends. How do you lead a team of women who are your peers? So I learned at an early age that being able to lead people or manage, you have to have a purpose so that you're all working towards something together, whatever that purpose may be. And then you have to know how to manage people individually. Everyone has different personalities. Mm-hmm. Everyone handles things differently. And I learned at a really young age, in my 20s, how to kind of navigate through managing people through their personalities.
Yeah, that's great. So after graduation, so 99, so you started a business with your brother.
With my brother.
Selling wireless phones.
Yes.
So this is around 2000, so cell phones looked a lot different 16 years ago, 17 years ago. So how did you get started in that business? Why cell phones?
Well, so when I talk back to in high school, when I worked for AirTouch Paging and sold pagers, I had experience in the wireless industry. My brother and I had both. He had also worked for AirTouch Paging. And let me just backtrack. I have two older brothers and then a younger sister, so there are four of us. Troy, my partner, and I are the middle ones, and we were always pretty close. So he also worked for AirTouch Paging, more on the operational customer service side. I was out on the sales floor when I was in high school. He was a little bit older. But after I graduated, he and I had connections with people throughout AirTouch Paging at the time, and cell phones were just becoming this new product that people wanted and loved. And he and I just decided, what do you think about trying to start our own business? So we telemarketed a little bit at first, which is interesting. And so when we decided to start the business, we were telemarketing to people. And we realized we're not really good telemarketers. We like to be in front of people. And so that's when we decided to open up our first location in Fashion Place Mall. So we were young. I had just graduated from college. I hadn't even been out for a year. And we kind of scraped up any cash that we could. He was married with a couple of kids at the time, so he did a second mortgage on his house to get some cash out a little bit. So we really just kind of went out, not a whole lot, went to Fashion Place Mall, and we got a location, it was a really funny location. We were in the middle of the food court. I don't know why we ended up there, but there was an open spot. So it was this little cell phone location, and we were surrounded by all of the food in the middle of the food court. But it ended up being such a great location because everyone eats, sits at the table, and they would look at us and they would see our signage, come over and talk to us. But we started out with just the two of us working every day, open to close. We went into the location, we painted the walls, we put the slat wall up. We just kind of did everything. We lived off of credit cards for the first year or so before we put everything we could back into the business to try and grow it. So, it was an interesting path to take, but it was something that we both loved and were excited about.
So that store in 2000, one store grew to this huge company, almost 400 stores across the country. So take us through that. So what were some of the maybe the critical paths from that first store to today?
The key, and this is something I will always say about our business, was finding the right people. We couldn't have built the company that we built over the last 16 years without the right people. So it started off with, the two of us in our one little store selling, working every day, but we had to start bringing on people to build up and start expanding. So we started with some growth here in Utah. We opened up a few more locations. Over the course of like 2 years, we opened up 5 or 6 locations in Utah. And again, we started to kind of build this team with us. And after 2 years, we thought, hey, if we can do this here, can we expand outside of the state of Utah? Is this something that we could take outside? So at the time, I had only been married about 6 months. I remember going home one day to my husband and said, hey, you want to move to Colorado and join the business with us? We want to go kind of expand and see if we can do this outside of Utah, because we knew that we had a niche here. Yeah. We just didn't know if we could do it outside of the state of Utah. So there were some leaders, there were some of our team members that moved with us to Colorado and helped us build that market. So then we started to see that we could really expand outside of Utah. And as long as we had the right people in place with us, we were able to kind of accomplish what we wanted. And then from there, we just grew. Every year we had goals, of whether it was 15 or 30 locations. And we started to build this team. And our executive team was comprised of 9 of us. All of them, except for our CFO, had been with us from within the first year of starting the business. So they were with us for 16 years, which you don't see a lot, but it was starting fresh with the right people and then encouraging and empowering each other to continue to be successful.
So that's obviously the critical point. So those first people, what were you looking for?
I think we were just looking for eager people that were ready to jump in and take on whatever was given to them, because most of them at some point left Utah, moved to a different area to expand, whether it was Arizona, Colorado, California. They all were ready to jump in and take on whatever the company needed to be successful. So those were and early on, you don't necessarily map that out. Sure. But you realize when you've got the right people on board and that they're dedicated and they want to work with you to be successful, then you learn to grow with them. Yeah.
Now, when you hire, what are you looking for when somebody's sitting across from you for an interview?
I think it's similar to what I was just talking about. People that have a work ethic that they want to dive in and they want to take on challenges. They're looking for opportunities to be successful. I believe that if people have that skill set and they have the work ethic, that they can learn any industry or any job. There were many times that we brought people on just because they had good experience. They didn't know anything about the wireless industry, but they surely picked up on we were able to train them on the wireless industry. So those were a lot of the qualities that we were looking for when we were bringing on new people to the team.
You're hiring for attitude.
Attitude is big. Right. And a cultural fit. I think a lot of times in companies, and you hear it a lot nowadays too, is that you want to make sure that there's a good fit, that that your culture as a business and what you're looking for is the same, that the candidate coming in is looking for that same cultural fit.
Yeah. So as you grew from just you and Troy to almost 2,000 people.
Almost 2,000 employees.
What are some of the leadership lessons that you've learned?
Okay, so I took notes on this. So if I can, because this is what I'm passionate about. So when we grew this business, there's the operational piece, which is structure and organization, and I love the business But to me, it's the people.
Sure.
It's all about the people. I think the organization was something that we were very passionate about, was the culture and who we were. And then, again, making sure that we were, we had that good fit with the employees that we had. So some of the things that when I think about leadership is investing in your people. When you're a leader, I think the biggest thing you have to look into and look deep is making sure that what you're doing is investing into your, whether it's a team of 1 or 2,000, that you're continually investing in what their career path is and what they're looking for. So empowering and encouraging them to do well, not holding people back, but being that cheerleader for the person that you are trying to give those experiences to, so that they can make it to that next step in their career path. Setting expectations, I think, is big as a leader. Setting expectations, a lot of times, for me and my leadership style, was setting the expectation with my team, making sure that you were as invested in whatever the project was that we were working on that I was, and we would set those expectations together. So then you were just as bought into it as I am. So it was really collaborating and making sure that we're setting those expectations. And then I think along with the expectations is the follow-up and follow-through. As a leader, you've got to make sure that if you're setting expectations of people, that you're also coming back around and you're making sure to follow up and follow through with them. Resilient and adapting to change. Our industry constantly was changing. In the first, 5 to 7 years, it was pretty consistent. Our relationship with Verizon, how they paid us, and then all of a sudden, this industry just started changing. And you guys probably see it from a consumer perspective, from the back end. There were so many changes, and we had to learn how to adapt to those changes and quickly, and then be able to make sure that our team of 2,000 understood what those changes were. So I think those are key. And then being a good listener as a leader, I think sitting down and really understanding what someone's, what path they want to take in career, even personally. I think that sitting down and just asking someone how their day was or their weekend, making them feel like you care about them, goes a long way. When you invest in people, then they want to do well for you. And I think that was something that we found, was that we were constantly making sure that we were doing things to invest in our employees, and then they naturally were great at returning that and wanting to work hard with us. So, and then I read this comment just recently on an article, and someone had made the statement, no one cares how much you know until they first know how much you care about them. So again, being a leader is really caring about the people around you and building them up, which I promise, I've seen it, will only build you up and take you to the places that you want to be. So those were just kind of some of the things that I wanted to highlight as far as leadership and my experience that I had over the course of,
Oh, that's great. So the company's growing, and I think in around 2000, you sold the company.
We did.
And then you just exited just a few months ago. So can you tell us what was the thought process about that sale, and then in the last 7 years, when it's somebody else who've owned it, how we've managed that transition?
Okay. To give you a bit of background on our business. So we started in 2000, like Dave said. In 2006, we sold a portion of our business to a small private equity out of California. We worked with them for about 4 years, and they had an exit plan, which, as some of you might know, that when you work with private equity, a lot of times they have an exit plan. So after about 4 years, we went to market, and at the time, we decided that it was a 50-50 partnership at that time, and they wanted to exit completely. And my brother and our dad actually joined our business within the first year after we kind of got going. He joined us, so he was a part of it. At that time, he decided he wanted to also exit So in 2006, we partnered up with a company out of Canada, and they own majority shares of the business. Troy, Kent, and I had the minority shares. And they were actually, they were a company that did the same thing that we did, but just up in Canada. They were family owned. They had retail locations, and they sold wireless phones. They were a multi-carrier, so they worked with the two of the biggest carriers in Canada. So it was a good relationship, a good partnership. They let us manage and operate the business as needed. We had, a few phone calls here and there, but otherwise they really just let us manage the business. Well, they had an opportunity where the two big carriers in Canada decided that they wanted to purchase their operation, their organization. So at the time when that happened, we were aware that Diamond Wireless was not going to be a part of their portfolio anymore. So we knew that the company would be going to market and that we would have to make some pretty big decisions, Troy, Kent, and I, on what we wanted to do. So we explored lots of different avenues as we kind of worked with these Canadian companies to go to market to see what we wanted to do. And after some time, it was just decided it was best for us to exit 100%. So we teamed up with another national agent. There are 6 Verizon national agents. They actually call us the Big 6. It's now the Big 4, I think. But they were the number one agent for Verizon, and they're the company that acquired our business. They had 700 locations, I think, and then add our 350. So it was a bittersweet experience. It was, you sit back and you think, how is it possible that when we opened up this one location 16 years ago, that we ended up where we were today, which was, 365 locations. We're operating in 33 states throughout the country, 2,000 employees. You start to really think, how did this all come about? But but to be honest, the toughest part of exiting at the time was the people. We had so many connections, so many relationships. That's how we built our business. Our relationships with the employees, the relationships with our partners. Those are key in making sure that a business can be successful. We had great relationships with Verizon, 16-year partnership, which was big, and then all the vendors and the people that we worked with. So it was a bittersweet. Here we are 4 months later, and it's still, still kind of sitting a little bit, but it's okay. They're moving forward and they're doing well, and still in a lot of contact with the people. So it's nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. So let's open it up to our audience here for some questions. Andrew, I'm just going to pick on you, Brighton High School graduate, for first question here.
So one thing that you talked about was, hold on.
Yeah, you're great. That's fine.
Was investing in your people as a leader. Yeah, sure. What are some specific ways so what I asked was you talked about how you invested in your people. What are some specific ways that you invested in your people as a leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were a sales organization, so we felt that it was very important that along with compensation of how people make money, right, that we also had incentive programs. We started those from day one. So we were always doing trips, or we had a president's club. We did a leadership conference every year that we brought in all of our leaders, store managers, district managers, regionals, and we committed 3 days to training, development, making sure that they had the necessary resources that they needed to be successful, and we spent money in making sure that we were investing in our people. And I think that, again, those incentive contests, those were a way for us to help build the culture as well, to make sure that people understood and could see that we were investing in them and kind of their career path. But then it really was the development program. I think that that's key in making sure that your employees feel like you're investing in them. Thanks for the question.
So just a quick question regard to the growth for Diamond Wireless. So I know a lot of companies struggle when it comes to growth, and that's where they usually tend to flop. So what was your strategy when you knew, like, when was the right time to start growing, and how did you manage that growth strategy?
Okay, that's a great question. I would say it's threefold when it comes to growth for our company. It was teaming up with landlords, so to get the right locations, teaming up with Verizon to see where they needed distribution, because that's a big piece of it, is making sure that we were getting the distribution that Verizon was looking for. So that communication with Verizon to make sure that we were fitting their needs. And then third, it was the people. The majority of our leadership team from the district manager level and up had promoted within the company. So I would say we probably had a 90% retention rate on just our DM level, so that they had stayed with the company. And most of the time that meant that they moved. So when we had an expansion or a growth period, we would have someone that kind of grew up with us, that were part of the team already, and then they would pick up and they would move to another state. We had employees that, just because they wanted to be a part of the growth, would move without even going out and exploring the city, or they would just pick up and we would help them get there, and they would just show up and start opening up locations for us. So, one thing that we had that I thought was a big piece of our business in 2013, we acquired, it was actually, they were Verizon locations, but 165 locations on the East Coast. We were only in the West Coast up to this point, and we got this contract with BJ's. It's kind of like a Costco wholesale club, and Verizon had locations in all of these warehouse locations, and they asked us if we would take them over. And after we got the contract signed with Verizon and BJ's, we had 2 months to strategically plan how are we going to open up 165 locations, and we had 2 nights to do it, and no employees. Verizon, 2 days before, we're going to terminate all the employees, and we had to come in and operate with a 2-day window, 165 locations. I have never been so proud of a team ever, and I could talk about this for days, but 2 months that we had to strategically plan, and I can't tell you the dedication of the employees that were willing to pick up and move because of the promotion that they were getting, in the process, and the dedication to move out and start in a city, in a state, the side of the country that they've never even been to. So that was kind of long-winded, but that I think is key, is making sure that you've got the people that are dedicated. And again, I don't think we could have talked people into that. They wanted to do it. It's because they felt like they were a part of something bigger, and they were. They were part of a culture that we felt that was making a difference.
But that had to start with the culture you set out from the start.
Yes.
That wasn't just magic of your employees deciding a week before they would do this for you, right? That was years of you focusing on those employees, right? So they would do that for you.
Absolutely.
That's great. Next question.
What are some of the challenges you faced in going into business with family, and how did you overcome those challenges?
That's a great question. Oh, it's interesting.
He's not here, so he won't.
I know.
But we are filming it, so
I
he
know.
might.
So, my brother and I always got along, even from a younger age. We always had just a good friendship, and we had our challenges. Don't get me wrong. There were times where I felt strongly about something, and he felt strongly about something. But we were really good about just sitting down and communicating and talking through it. I think that we knew that if we didn't do that, that it wouldn't go well. So, but after sitting down and be able to talk through those, whatever the challenge was that we were trying to focus on, we agreed, and then we wouldn't let that hang over our head, right? You kind of have to make those decisions, and whatever they are, you've just got to take the next step, and you have to be positive and move forward. As we got bigger, as the growth happened, we all took different sectors of the business. So a lot of times there was just a lot of honesty in I trust. So my husband, he took over all the business development. He did all of our growth for the entire company. Troy really had that partnership and relationship with Verizon, and I took on the people. So I was, the HR, payroll, incentives, and I really focused on. So I think at the end of the day, we really sat down and just trusted each other and the business decisions that each of us were making. So I think a lot of it comes down to trust and supporting each other. And we had a lot of fun, I'll be honest. We had a great time when I talk about these incentive trips, and we would go with employees and we'd spend time with them, and we'd hang out and we'd get to know them, and we'd get to know their significant others. And so we try to really incorporate having a good time while we were doing all of this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's great.
Great question.
So I enjoyed what you said about like relationships being the key to business. And one question I had is, sometimes relationships are easy to form, and you talked about incentives and things like that. But one question I had is, how do you maintain these relationships over time? Maybe after you left Verizon, or when employees leave, what's one way that you do to stay in touch or keep that relationship going?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's just been, especially since the company dissolved and we've kind of all moved forward, it's really just reaching out. I have a lot that I'm still in contact with each week and trying to meet up with for lunch, or making sure that if any of them are out looking for other opportunities, if they're not happy where they're at, making sure that I'm doing recommendation letters. But yeah, just trying to keep that personal interaction going is huge, but a lot of it's just through messaging and trying to catch up. There was a group of us that got together last week for dinner. About 30 employees from the corporate office showed up. And so, yeah, just trying to maintain those relationships is key.
So my question is, for somebody that has done such honest work as yourself and done a lot of hard work, what's your next big adventure after Diamond Wireless? What's in your sights?
That's a really good question. To be honest, I took the first 3 months, and my focus was my family. I have 2 young kids, and again, an amazing husband. And my focus was the kids. I traveled a lot. I was gone constantly, so I really wanted to make sure that they were my priority. I've been thinking a lot lately, though, what is that next step? As you can probably tell, my passion are people. So I would love to, I'm happy to be here, like this, doing stuff like this. If I can help influence or impact or help anyone in a little, just a little bit, that's something that I really am passionate about. So I anticipate doing something else. I don't sit still very well. And again, after 16 years of building and creating and collaborating, it's just so fun. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. We were at work every day. I was there in the morning till the end of the night. And I didn't have to be, but I loved it. So I look forward to whatever that new opportunity is. I just don't know what it is yet.
Next question.
How do you balance your family life and your work life? Or how did you, I guess?
It's a great question. A lot of it, again, it comes down to communication. My husband and I worked together, and then we also were managing a family together. So it was a lot of just support for one another. There were times where Kent had tons on his plate, and I knew that I needed to be home with the kids, and vice versa. There were there were times where I was working on big projects, and I needed to be away from the home a little bit more than normal. So really, it's just a team effort and the communication. I think without that, it would be hard to succeed, but the family's priority, and that's something that we've always talked about, making sure that our kids, they're 10 and 7, we have a daughter and a son, and just making sure that they have everything that they want. And then when you're away from work, trying to kind of sit back and say, okay, we're not going to, we've had to do this sometimes, like, okay, we're done. We can't talk about work anymore. We're focused 100% on the kids. So I think really it comes down to it. You can do it, and and you can be successful at both. But it is challenging, and it's hard. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of mental capacity to say, okay, I've got to make sure that I'm here and I'm focused and I'm in the moment with the family, or I'm here and I'm focused and I'm in the moment with work and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask you, so a lot of students especially, there's a lot of students that are trying to start their own businesses, and there's a lot of risk that goes into that. So I'm just gonna ask you, what helped you overcome the fear of starting your business and growing your business when you were starting out?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. There was some fear. I was pretty young, right out of college, so I think for me it was like, let's go for it, I don't have a whole lot to lose, so it was easy. Now, if we go to start a new business, I'm going to be a lot more calculated than I was back then. But I think that's also what gave us, I think that's why it was okay too, why we were able to just kind of dive in and say, we're going to give it our all and we're going to put everything that we've got into it. I think that we also weren't looking out for us, we were looking out for what was best for the business. I think I talked about we lived off of credit cards for the first year and a half. So any kind of revenue or profit that we were making, any profit, we were putting right back into the business because we knew we had to sustain the business first. And if we did that, then we could continue to have some growth. And then we were able to, as things got better and improved, we were able to earn a little bit of profit. And then I think the thing is we always just invested back in the business. So there's risk in doing that. There's risk in expanding and the cost of operating and opening up new locations. But I think that from day one, we always knew that we were there to invest in the business because the business was what was most important. So advice for those of you that are thinking about starting a business, it's hard. There's opportunity out there and there's risk, but I think that you just need to go in with passion and ready to kind of take on whatever comes your way, because it's not going to be what you expect. A lot of what we did over 16 years wasn't what I expected. When we opened up our first store, I never would have imagined we would have had 360 stores across the United States. But I think that we didn't get ahead of ourselves. We stayed in the moment and really tried to focus on what we were doing at the time, and then that helped us with our growth.
Wouldn't you say, though, part of it was that you didn't know when you took that job in high school at a paging business,
Right.
that could lead to this huge career,
Yes.
right? And you talked about when we interviewed for our magazine about being open to opportunity, right?
Right.
And so, one of the things that we try to get across to these students is it may seem like a prosaic little job that you have during college, but that may end up being what opens you to something much different.
Absolutely. And I think to tie into that, it was because of the relationships that we built when I was in high school with some people at AirTouch Paging, which then was eventually assumed and changed to Verizon. So that's But that's where we started the business, was because of those relationships that we built, both my brother and I, at a very young age.
Yeah.
So building those relationships, you never know where those relationships will end up
Right.
serving you in a great purpose down the road.
Right, right. Next question. We're waiting for that. So one of the things, obviously, you do a lot in college is read. So are there any books that you would recommend to these students that maybe had an influence during your career?
Oh, you're catching me off guard. There were quite a few that I read over time.
Or maybe some people that influenced you as you built this great business?
Yeah, there were lots of people that influenced me over time. A couple of specifics, I think, just as a mentor, as a young person. Patty Holofia, who's actually sitting here in the crowd, she was a mentor for me. She was my advisor in Chi Omega, and she was a woman that had a career and a family, and that's something I knew I always wanted, and I wasn't surrounded by very many women that did that, so she was an inspiration to me that you could do both. There is one person that gave me some good advice. So I talked about the leadership conference that we would do every year. So it was about this time last year we were having our big conference. I was on a flight to Orlando, which is where we were holding the conference. We were having 400 people attend this conference. So I was speaking in front of our leaders for the entire organization, plus partners that we had. So they were all going to be at this conference. And I was actually sitting next to John Huntsman Jr. on the flight. So I had just been highlighted in the magazine, and so I started talking to him a little bit, and we had a great conversation. And I told him that I was nervous, and I was trying to kind of prepare my speech for all these leaders that I was going to be sitting in front of. And I said, do you have any advice for me? You speak to people all the time. And he said, people will not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. And I thought to me, that made a lot of sense. It resonated with me. And it kind of helped me steer my speech to our leaders in that direction, which I think was right. People when you speak to, how do you feel when you walk away from when someone speaks to you?
Yeah.
So I thought that was great advice from him.
That's
So
great.
that's something that's always kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, that's great. There's a question in the back.
So you talked a lot about expanding into Colorado and the western United States and eventually to the East Coast. What was maybe your biggest challenge or one thing you would have done differently that could have improved your business when you expanded into different parts of the U.S.?
We did it really well. Sorry. What could we have done differently? I think I'm being funny here, but I think that was part of who we were. We perfected expansion and growth, and the expansion and growth came career opportunities. So every time that we expanded, because we were so big about promoting within, that it gave that opportunity for someone to step up into that next management level, to be promoted. Again, whether it was into a store manager position or if it was into a district manager position where now they were overseeing 5 to 10 stores, and then in some cases into a regional and even a VP. So that's a tough question. I feel like that's something that we were really, really good at. And that's kind of who we were. We were expansion with growth and career paths. So I don't know that I have a great answer for you, to be honest.
You said you had almost like annual goals, at least for a while when you're starting out, as to how big you wanted to get. So it was managed growth in a lot of ways.
Yes, it's managed growth, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that came down to sitting down as a team and deciding how much growth can we handle this
Right.
year? What are the opportunities that we have out there? Again, what is Verizon looking for? So teaming up with them. So a lot of it, was and managing the financials and the budget. Like, what was in our budget? How much could we expand? Because that was a big piece of it. You have to be able to have the money to go out and open up these stores, do store build outs. It was really expensive. We perfected that over time. That was probably some of our challenges, making sure that we had the right store layout, working with the right vendors. That's something that's constantly changing as well. So that's something that, again, we perfected over time, finding the right vendors to make sure that we had this right storefront look and feel.
When you were growing, so you mentioned there was the big 6, we're now the big 4 for Verizon.
Correct.
Was the strategy based on, if you started out as being number 6 of the 6, we want to get to 5, 4, 3, or was it just more about your business and how Diamond Wireless could grow smarter?
Yes, it was both. We wanted our own internal growth. We needed that for the business, but there was a big piece of making sure that Verizon was happy with us. So they created the Big 6 in 2011. It didn't exist until then, and we were asked to be a part of the 6 when they created this group. So 6 national agents, and there were scorecards every month. Scorecards came out, and they told us where we ranked against our competitors or our peers. And so there were metrics that we were number 1, and there were metrics that we were number 6. So a lot of times, our metrics that we were out there focusing on were based off of, okay, how can we get to 3, and then how are we going to get to 1? Because we don't want to be 6 in this particular metric. So so a lot of it was Verizon driven.
So you got graded every month?
Every month.
Not twice a year?
Not twice a year. Every month we had a call.
It gets worse.
Right. Be prepared.
Yeah, that's right. Have time for a couple questions. Go ahead.
So I personally have never heard of Diamond Wireless before, so I did some Googling research on it, and a lot of comments were made about the benefits package of your company. How does a company establish a good benefit package that is competitive with other companies?
Yeah, great question. I think that a lot of people are looking for great benefit packages when they go into work, when they go to a company. We always had health benefits. But over time, we realized that we needed to add more benefits. So we started doing a 401k a few years back, doing a match. So that was always on our mind of how do we make these benefit packages, pay time off, all that kind of, those are all the benefits that people are considering when they're out looking for a job. So we wanted to make sure that we had good benefit packages. Could we have been better? We probably could have added some additional benefits, I think, to help with the retention, maybe even more the recruiting than the retention, getting people on board. So I think that's an important part of a business, and again, recruiting and getting people on board. But it was something that we always focused on and tried to make sure that we had, and we're trying to improve.
One of the things that follow up on that is, when we take students out to visit employers, especially a lot of the tech companies, the benefits are much more visible in the workplace, right? So and that always obviously wows people, right? You've got foosball tables and food for free, whatever. But right, as you're going through as a owner and the costs of various businesses, right? What an employee doesn't see is the cost of healthcare, right, versus a foosball table from an ownership perspective. So what are some of those calculations? You mentioned, some of the benefits are great for recruiting, and those are some of the more visible things, right?
Right.
But people don't stay for a foosball table; they stay for great healthcare benefits
Healthcare.
or whatever, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's why it was always something that we had to make sure that we're being competitive within the industry. I think that a lot of it we had to see. We wanted to make sure that we were ahead of the curve, or that we were maintaining what we needed to make sure that we had the right benefits in place. But it's a huge expense to a company, and it's something you have to manage. And it was something that we were constantly talking about. And then there are big decisions where you can go out and you can try and negotiate, with a different health carrier to see and get better rates. But then, and this is something that I dealt with, but there would be disruption for the current employees and the healthcare provider that we were with. If we went to someone else, if I chose someone else, it might save the company some money, but there was going to be a lot of disruption in the healthcare and the doctors that people were already working with. So it didn't feel like, so I had to do that cost benefit, which is better here. Well, again, because our focus was always employees and what's best for the employees, we maybe paid more in health insurance because we knew that it was the right thing to do in staying with the carrier that we were with.
Right. Patty, I'm going to give you an opportunity here. Last question. You know Danielle better than probably anybody in this room except for her husband Kent. So,
Well, I cheated. We had lunch last week and we're talking. Maybe share one decision that you made that impacted you long term that you may not make knowing what you know now.
that's a great question.
She knows my answer. Sitting here today and sitting in our office on September 30th, I know that had I, actually we all do, my brother Kent and I talked about this, we never would have sold in 2006 a share of our business to someone else. I think we were young, we didn't know where the industry was going. We kind of took an opportunity to kind of try and be safe. So on a personal level, there was some money that could be taken off the table to kind of give a little bit of security. But I think now, what we know now is that we could have done it on our own. We didn't need the VCs. They didn't really do much for us, to be honest. It was just this partnership. Again, we were pretty young early on in the business, and there was maybe a little bit of fear of where this would take us. Because I think had we not done that, we would still own the business 100%. We all loved what we did. We loved the people that we worked with. But because of that decision, we landed where we did in September. But I also don't regret it. And I never will. I think it was a learning experience for us, and I learned a lot. And I think that that's just maybe gearing me up for whatever this next step in my, career path or entrepreneur spirit, whatever that next business is. But so yes, so Patty knows that that's something that we've always. But like I said, we never sat back and dwelled on it. It was again a decision that we made, and we moved forward with what we had. So yeah. So thanks, Patty.
That was a great question. So, I think the two sort of big concepts I get here from what you've shared with us is to be open to opportunity.
Absolutely.
A high school job at a paging business leads to this huge career, and focus on people and relationships, right? And I think that's something that all of us can take away, regardless of whether we end up working for large companies or founding our own businesses. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you.